Okay, welcome back to those on the live stream. We're about to do landscape single capture. So I think we're ready to go. Yep. Okay. Next print, please. We have a silver with distinction at 85. Could I ask, let me see, Steve, just to make some comment, please?
Almost painterly quality. The light is outstanding. What pulled it back for me was the artifacts that were starting to appear in the clouds and the printing.
Absolutely. Next print, please. Yep. This print score is 79. Could I have a quick comment from, let me see, Lisa?
I really enjoyed the flow and the softness and how the river took us down to that beautiful scenery at the end. Perhaps a little more contrast and people might have joined me up in the silver range.
Thank you. Next print, please. Sprint score is 76. And can I get David to make comment, please?
Yeah, look, I think the heavy vignette is not necessary with this picture. It's very subtle, and I wouldn't have used that vignette. I'd just leave it as subtle with the sky and the simpleness of the single tree.
Next print, please. We have a silver with distinction at 87, and we have a challenge from Lisa, who scored this a gold at 90. Thanks, Lisa.
Okay, I really love what the photographer has seen and brought to this image. It has been processed differently to almost any other landscape that I've seen. It's almost like a line drawing. It's stunning. Everything is beautifully sharp from front to back. I love how there's just that one little house in the bottom right third. I'm struggling to fault it. I know a lot of people have tried to decide whether or not the top, it'd be stronger without the top. I like how it caps off the image. I also don't mind it without, but I don't feel that is enough alone to keep it out of the gold. For me, that's probably bringing it, maybe stopping it going further if that's a preference for people. Talk to me.
Okay, let's have a look. Yes, before we go, Steve, because you're kind of in the middle there, I'd just like to see someone. Dave, you're on 85.
Yeah, I love this image. I really do. I'm with you all the way. Top. I just took it off, and it just works for me. And I think it could be a golf course, and there's a fairway zigzagging along. I don't know. It could be separate blocks of land, but it's just such a well found picture. But that sort of strong highlight as you come down about 1.5 inches or 5 centimetres for you young kids. And you draw a line across there, and there's the picture I feel. It's just, yeah, yep, yep. And I think that's the gold in there, yeah.
Steve.
Absolutely word for word what Mr. Oliver said. Yeah, if the photographer's out there, crop that top. That's what's actually stunting this gorgeous piece of art.
Yes, but Simone.
Sorry, just quickly. I agree with that top sort of left-hand corner. It's a little bit distracting. But I was trying to figure out what I saw in this, and it wasn't a landscape anymore. I actually see it as music, a sheet of music, or even when the birds sit on the wire. So I try and read sort of some other element in there. But it's beautiful, and you can see all the detail in the snow. Sometimes snow is perfectly smooth, so you're not going to get detail, but there is detail in certain areas in there, which is great. I'll come up a few points.
Thanks, Lisa. We're sitting on a solid silver distinction at 87.
All right. No problem at all. I agree with you about the top. That would definitely make it. I'm just looking at our differences. A gold award, outstanding visual communication. Gold with distinction, exceptional visual and creativity. I still feel that this is outstanding, as opposed to a silver with distinction, which is professional excellence and superior visual communication. For me, what they've seen and what the photographer has brought to this in its processing, even without that amendment, is still, to my mind, outstanding. So, see how you go.
Thanks, Lisa. Hold your score. Everyone else is free to rescore the print. Gold award at 90. Thank you. Next print, please. Print scores 85, silver with distinction. Let's have a look. Simone, you make comment, please.
Yeah, I enjoyed this. The contrast is powerful, and the colour palette is also very intriguing. I enjoyed it for its, again, sort of, I felt that it was sort of like a bacteria sort of infecting the rest of the blues. So, yeah, nicely seen.
Thank you. Next print, please. This print scores 79. Let's have a look. Steve, can you make a comment, please?
I can see what, excuse me, I can see what the photographer saw and was constructing here. I feel that perhaps a different angle or something like that could have helped this composition better.
Thank you. Next print, please. Print score is 75. And could I get David to make a comment, please?
Something here. I just think you've just got to watch sharpness all the way through. There's a softness. It's just not quite pin sharp. Maybe the tripod wasn't used. I don't know, but I think that would have helped. And cropping, maybe tighten up on the crop because there's so many elements from the foreground to the background.
Thank you. Next print, please. Gold award at 90. Now, we haven't had a comment on it, and we will have a comment. And I'm going to get Steve.
Exceptional. This is outstanding visual communication. I wanted to touch it to make sure that it wasn't smeared with paint, especially that dark red, earthy, rusty sort of depth that's actually happening there. Initially, I thought, oh, that bright white was a distraction, and it's exactly the opposite. It actually formed a foundation for everything else to sit on. Yeah, remarkable. Beautiful.
Thank you. Next print, please. Sprint scores a silver award at 84. We have a challenge from Steve, who scored this 92. Thanks, Steve.
So this situation that this photographer is in a single capture, is actually quite remarkable. The amount of time that has actually been allowed to capture the sort of smoke or the eruption is the perfect amount to actually give this whole composition movement and flow and a story. And then you see that little puff right on top there as if it had just been placed there. Is really, really quite remarkable. Everything in terms of a sky like that could fall apart very quickly when printing, and it has been handled exceptionally well. There's the perfect amount of contrast and depth. So technically, I can't fault it, and emotionally, it's actually speaking volumes as well.
Hang on a sec. I'll give you a go in a sec, Lise. I think I need probably David to... you're down at the lower end.
Yes, I wanted more. I wanted the volcano in the foreground that's cropped. I wanted square. I wanted more of the energy coming out of that first one to be big and bold rather than... It seems like there's just way too much sky there for me. And I think that's the distraction. Losing the sky, more of the volcano in the foreground, which I'm sure would be there. And you wouldn't go that far without getting the whole thing. And then I think it completes that mirror. The first volcano, the second volcano, and that beautiful mist in between. I'm still in silver, but I'm not seeing... I think there's gold there, but maybe a different crop.
Lisa?
I'm with both of you. I love the composition. I can see where that might even be a better composition. But I'm afraid, Steve, I'm not with you on the treatment of it. I feel it's been overdone, over contrast and oversaturated. And the sky's been brought down and haloed those mountains at the back. There's a black ridge all the way along the top of the mountains at the back. So if the photographer perhaps revisits this with a delicate, almost pastel hand, if they don't have another crop to suit David's, I might go up there with you, but I'm quite comfortable. I'm at 85, I'm silver distinction, but I don't know I can go up far.
Steve?
Yeah, I did see that. And it's not that I'm omitting that, it's just that the rest of it does overtake it. Or surpass that. And I actually think a composition like this is deliberate. It is very, very constructed. And what the photographer wants us to look at is that tiny little puff of smoke just above the actual peak, which is bang center in the composition. So I feel that composition is extremely deliberate. And granted, I do actually feel like I am losing that foreground of the cut volcano down the bottom, but the story's not about that. It's about that tiny little puff, smack bang in the centre.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, hold your score, Steve, and everyone else is free to revisit the scoring. It scored an 84, so a silver. We now have a solid silver with distinction at 87. Next print, please. Silver awarded 81. Let me see. David, could you make comment, please?
Yeah, it's a very subtle, simple image and very brave to leave the telegraph line in there. I think the image ends just where that first hill finishes. Maybe that would help bring this up a few more marks.
Thank you. Next print, please. Silver awarded 80. Let me see. Lisa, could you make comment?
Yeah, I think this is really well seen. I love the leading lines of the telegraph going all the way through. I just feel the contrast between the foreground and the background is too great. If you could put more contrast in the mountain and a little less depth in the foreground, it might be a stronger image.
Thank you. Next print, please. Print score was 78. We have a challenge from Simone, who scores it a good silver at 84. I'll accept that, Simone.
Yeah, guys, I want to have a bit of a chat about this. Look, I'm not asking for silver distinction or gold. I just want to get it up into the award standard. You may be tricked maybe into thinking that it's an aerial. Okay.
Sorry. It's wrong on the screen, yeah.
Yeah, you may be tricked into thinking this may be an aerial, but obviously they have put it into the single capture category. So perhaps we're not looking at an aerial. Perhaps we are looking at maybe some algae, maybe some water, and it's just something a little bit different. The colour palette is beautiful. I do wish it was a little bit more contrasted. So if there was a little bit more in the highlights and the shadows, ever so slightly in the shadows, I think the darker areas are still quite strong. But yeah, please, let's have a chat about it.
Okay. Yeah, Steve.
Yeah, thanks. Which, if your theory is correct, then that explains the softness which is happening on the bottom left. And it is really soft. If this was an aerial, that wouldn't be so unless it was the actual geography. For me, though, the tonal range and the depth is what's missing within this image. It does need to be expanded out. Compositionally, I think it's fine. Like there's this beautiful triangular kind of flow which goes in and out and back in. However, that depth is really what's kind of holding me back.
Thanks, Steve. Lisa.
What Steve said.
Simone.
Alrighty, so all I'm hearing, guys, is that the colour depth is not as you would like it to be. So the composition is beautiful. I think it does deserve a few more points. Again, not asking for silver distinction. I'm asking for a silver and for all those things that I mentioned before. I think to bring it down into just professional practice, just for the tonal range, maybe a little bit harsh. So bring it up.
Thank you, Simone. You hold your score. Everyone else is free to rescore the print. Silver award at 80. Thanks, Kelly. Come and have a seat. Next print, please. We have a solid silver with distinction at 88. We have a challenge from David Oliver, who scored this a gold with distinction at 95. Thanks, David.
Yeah, this is the most subtle black and white I've seen in a long, long time. The detail from the foreground to the background, the journey we're taken on with the lighting is just probably half a dozen light bulbs. And they're just doing this amazing job of lighting what we want to see, taking us on this journey. It's very, very clever, very sophisticated, beautifully found, beautifully framed. All the verticals are perfect. And then you finish up in this little sort of, I don't know what it is. It's a factory area, which I'm really enjoying, with maybe a staircase there, I'm not too sure. But it's just a wonderful, beautiful image that is just one of those really, really well-found images, and the photographer needs to be rewarded for finding this beautiful piece.
Thanks. I'll go to Johannes.
Yes. What held me back from going higher was the crop. While it looks perfectly fine like this, and I scored at 84, I think if you crop the top off and keep a square crop, I think it's in a composition, and then I'll be totally with you, David. Also, I thought maybe a little more crunch and contrast for this kind of scene might have suited it quite well too. I think it's like a Japanese aquifer, like where the water runs out. I think I've seen those in anime movies. Yeah, I'm listening.
Steve, thanks.
Yeah, you know what? I am actually coming up. Initially I thought, the focal point, where? And you know what? There is none, which is perfect. I don't know why a focal point is needed. You're allowed to explore and kind of go to each and every bright point, even the one right up the top to allow down. The most sophisticated, and I think it's a beautiful word that you've used, the most sophisticated part of this is the precise angle, the very considered angle of the photographer to allow that horizon where the actual pillars meet the ground to be completely horizontal, and it's forced that perspective. So yeah, I'm coming way up.
David?
Yeah, you can't really take from the top because that's the light source that's lighting up the foreground, and you've got that all these little angles coming off those pillars that are perfectly lit and taking you on this journey. And then if you look at the edges of each pillar, you're seeing little key lines coming down, which is separating the different areas of whatever it is. And it's so clever and so subtle. And it had to be flat. It couldn't have been contrasty because we would have had too much information in the whites and too many blacks. So it needed to be a beautiful, subtle print to take it where it is, which is beautiful visual communication.
Thanks, David. David, you hold your score. Everyone else is free to rescore the print. Thank you. Gold award at 93. Thanks, guys. We're going to actually take a break here for lunch. Kelly, you're needed for... Yep. Okay. So if everyone else could take a break now and be back by 1 p.m, please.